Today I'm taking you along with me as I try my hand at a little batch cooking, eat up some leftovers, and make a hearty brunch for my family of 7. We're kicking it off with a hearty brunch I made for us. Now I can tell that this is a Saturday because there's meat on that tray. The kids and I don't typically have bacon or sausage or ham during the week with our breakfast. We usually save meat for breakfast for Saturdays when Daddy's home. Meat for breakfast just seems like a nice extra thing that we get to have on the weekends, but during the week I make really quick and easy breakfast for the most part. That's oatmeal mainly, and sometimes I'll do pancakes, and sometimes I do grits, and sometimes the kids can even eat cereal, but for the most part, it's oatmeal or scrambled eggs and toast, something like that. If we have lunch meat, which I've been trying to get away from buying too much of that anymore, but if we do have lunch meat or cubed ham, then sometimes I'll throw that in our scrambled eggs as well. Now, what happened here is the grits overflowed the pot. I made the mistake of stepping away from the stove. I think I might have been washing a dish or something, but I took my eye off that stove and the grits overflowed the pot. This is an amateur mistake. If you've made grits, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the sausage is out of the oven, the grits are simmering, and now I'm going to fry up some eggs so that we can put those over top of the grits. Some people like their grits sweet, but we are definitely a salt and pepper, butter and cheese with our grits kind of family. Actually, my husband isn't really crazy about grits, but he will eat them with a fried egg on top, so I always make sure to do that for him. I had sliced up some sourdough bread earlier, and so I popped that in the oven to toast it up because we are just too big of a family to use a toaster at this point. I haven't had one for about 5 years, and I don't miss it at all.
You're like a cafeteria lady.
I am. I'm the lunch lady. And just as if we were in the cafeteria, everything had its place. I wanted to create a little assembly line so that it would be easy for everyone to make their own plate. We had grits and sausage, fried eggs and toast, and then the toppings of butter and cheese. And so I'm explaining that to the girls here and the flow that I'd like us to go in so that we're not bumping into each other in this kitchen. So I got my little ducklings all in a row and we filled up our plates and our bellies. Using up the last bit of this loaf of sourdough bread, but not to worry, I've got more dough in the fridge just waiting to be put in the oven. This is going to go along with our lunch, and we are having leftovers of chicken orzo that I made the day before. And now I'm doing a little cleanup. We make 3 meals a day here in our home, and if we don't take the time after each meal to clean up the mess, it just piles up and gets out of hand. We have to sweep after each meal and wash the dishes after each meal. I don't normally put the dishes away until later after they've dried like I'm doing here, but spraying and wiping down the table and the counters and the stove are all a part of cleanup after each meal. And since I have kids who are old enough to help, I typically bring them along with me and have them help in some way. One of us will do the dishes, one of us will sweep the floors. The tables and counters need to be cleared, and crumbs need to be wiped off. They don't always love it, but I'm trying to teach them to love the work that they have in front of them. Sometimes I need that encouragement myself. So we all do our part, but sometimes I just want to get it done, and it can be enjoyable to get the space back in order on my own. We have an errand to run this day, so I'm warming up some leftovers for lunch prior to heading out because A, I don't want our food to go to waste, and B, I don't want to be tempted to go to a drive-thru because everyone is hungry and we're smelling all the fast food while we're in town. it's in the air during lunch and dinner time, those peak drive-through hours. Out of curiosity, I looked up how much a meatball sub costs at our favorite pizzeria. And y'all, it's $8.50 for half a sub. Multiply that by 5 eating people, because my husband's, he's at work. And before tax, that's $42.50. Part of what I'm trying to do as a homemaker is manage my home and resources well, so I don't want to waste our food, time, or money. This is a dry sourdough starter. We have run out of bread and it is time to make some more. So I'm just measuring out 30 grams of this dry starter and I'm going to add 130 grams of water. But what happened was I had overheated the water on the stove, and you cannot add water that's too hot to your starter or else you'll kill the yeast. So I just had to put some cold water in this glass, and then I added the hot water to it, and that brought the temperature down enough to where it was safe to add to the starter. Okay, and then I'm just taking the end of my wooden spatula here and just gonna stir it up. And it usually doesn't fully incorporate all the way. It does take a bit of stirring to get mixed in. And I'll just kind of use the spoon handle to mash the starter against the bowl, and that helps too. I think what happens is the starter has been in the fridge and it's already dry, but it does get a little more dried out the longer that it sits in there. Mine is in there for probably around 2 to 3 weeks before I have to feed or refresh it again. So I tear the scale. And now I'm going to add in 120 grams of flour. And of course, this makes about just shy of a cup and a half of levain. And so normally with sourdough pancakes, you need 2 cups of sourdough starter. So you can just double this and you'll have about just shy of 3 cups. Okay. So now I'm just gonna stir this up. And so I just cover this with a small plate. And normally something like this would take about maybe 6 to 8 hours to get bubbly and be useful as yeast to make your bread. But I've started this kind of late in the day. So what I do is I put it in the cabinet above my sink, and it has a light underneath, and so it makes it a much warmer environment and it'll ferment quicker. Then whenever I get home later on in a few hours, I can go ahead and mix the flour, water, and salt with the sourdough starter. I'll let it ferment for about, between 5 and 6 hours, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator to finish fermenting, and in the morning I can put it in the oven and have fresh bread. I'm beginning to figure out what method of meal prep works best for me and what doesn't really work. I'm cooking up a few different things in my kitchen today, and the really cool thing about this is that I made several different things in just 2 hours. I was pretty shocked at how much food I was able to make in such a short amount of time. So first I just got the whole chicken seasoned and put that in the oven at 400 degrees for about an hour and a half. And then I realized that while that's baking in the oven, I can be cooking something else on the stove. So I had these beans soaking overnight because I knew that I wanted to make some chili. Chili is a great, cozy, and delicious meal to eat when it is chilly outside. So I prefer to soak the beans the night before. That way they're ready to go in the morning or in the afternoon when I want to go ahead and cook them. I prefer to soak dry beans because not only are they more economical than canned beans, but honestly, I notice everyone's not quite as gassy when we eat them, and that's enough for me to make the switch. Although every once in a while I will buy canned beans, but it's very infrequent now. So I just got some ground sausage and ground beef in a large pot and got that going while I worked on my vegetables. And I've got some onions, celery, and carrots, and today I did also do some fresh garlic. It's very important to season as you go. You'll see me season salt and pepper kind of with each layer of this chili. And I just grated that garlic into the pot instead of chopping it. So the chili is simmering on the stove, and I'm gonna make some brown jasmine rice with this meal. And so I just rinsed it really well and then bring it to a boil and then down to a simmer. And then I just add a couple cups of those beans right into the chili just at the point when they start to get tender. And you see this chicken just beautiful and delicious. And that's the big batch cooking I did in 2 hours, but included in the batch cooking that I did this day is this sourdough. Now, my starter is bubbly, or my levain is called a levain, but it's nice and bubbly and active, and it's ready to go to mix in with the flour and water and salt. I'm just getting my wheat berries out of my 5-gallon bucket, and I put them in my grain mill, and they go through the mill as berries, and they come out as beautiful, healthy flour. I'm making enough dough for 3 loaves of sourdough bread. The measurements that I use for 1 loaf is 100 grams of starter, 350 grams of water, 450 grams of freshly milled flour, and a teaspoon of salt. In that big bowl, I double all of that. This is all worth it when you have fresh bread for the next few days. Well, the last thing that I want to share with you is a cozy hot tea that we've been drinking lately. It's caffeine free, so my little girls can enjoy it with me. This tea is so fragrant and flavorful, and we have really been enjoying it. I also want to say thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope that you are getting some value from the content that I'm creating. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you did. If you're a new viewer, then comment down below and share a little something about yourself. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day and weekend.